My name's Eliza Matthews. I'm 32 years old. On paper, I've built what most people would call a successful life, top of my class, at Cornell senior investment strategist at a major Manhattan firm and owner of a luxury apartment with a skyline view. But none of that has ever been enough. Not for my father. The Matthews family is a name in Boston. My father, Richard Matthews, built his real estate empire from scratch and made sure everyone knew it. To the world, he's a self-made legend, sharp suits, sharper tongue, and an ego wrapped in generations of polished legacy. But to me, he's the man who could never say the words I needed most, not once. Not even when I made partner at 29. With the annual Matthews reunion approaching, always held the last weekend of June, suspiciously close to Father's Day, I decided to do something drastic, something undeniable. I bought him a brand new black Mercedes S-Class, the exact model he once pointed out at the country club, admiring like it was a prize to be earned, not just purchased. It cost me almost a year of savings. I told myself it was a gesture, a peace offering, a bridge between his pride and my persistence. But deep down, I knew what it really was, a bribe for love. I told no one, not even my best friend Taylor, about the real reason I'd picked that exact model or spent that much. But I did tell her something else, that I was bringing more than just a car to this year's reunion. I was also bringing the truth. 3 months earlier, I'd sent a sample to a genetic ancestry service on a whim. I expected Scandinavian roots, maybe some Irish. What I didn't expect was a red flag one that suggested my paternal markers didn't align with Richard Matthews at all. I laughed at first, a glitch surely. But curiosity turned into suspicion, and suspicion led me to quietly swipe a few hairs from my father's brush during a visit home. The results arrived in a thick white envelope 2 weeks later, still sealed, still untouched, until now. It sat in the bottom of my purse, heavier than it should be, like a small brick of truth I wasn't sure I could carry. I hadn't told anyone, not my siblings, not even Taylor, because once it was open, there'd be no turning back. Once I knew, I couldn't unknow. But the question buzzed in my head like an electric wire. If he's not my biological father, what does that make everything I've done to win his love? Still, I smiled as I rang the bell of my childhood home in Brookline, that perfect stone front colonial with trimmed hedges and matching Range Rovers in the driveway. Richard answered crisp as ever in khakis and a Ralph Lauren polo, like he was headed to a board meeting instead of greeting his daughter. "Eliza." "You're early," he said, glancing at his watch like I'd interrupted a schedule he hadn't shared. "I know," I said. "I wanted to give you something." I handed him a small box Mercedes logo shining proudly on the key fob inside. He opened it slowly, blinked once, then twice. "Is this some kind of joke?" he asked. I guided him to the window. Outside in the driveway, the black S-Class glistened like a trophy. He didn't speak for a moment, then came the assessment, "This is excessive." My stomach clenched, but I forced a laugh. "It's from my promotion. I just wanted to do something for you." He circled the car like a buyer, not a recipient. Tapped the tires, squinted at the touchscreen, took it for a spin around the block, commenting on the steering like it was a used rental. And when he parked it in the garage, not the driveway where guests might see it, he turned and said, "Must be doing well to waste money like this." That night, alone in my hotel, I called Taylor, told her everything. "Take it back," she said. "He doesn't deserve it. He never has." But I couldn't. Not yet. I wasn't ready to let go of the fantasy, the fairy tale where a single perfect gesture might finally unlock a lifetime of withheld affection. Besides, tomorrow was the reunion, and maybe, just maybe, he'd surprise me in front of everyone. The day of the reunion arrived with unnerving perfection. Sunny, mild breeze, not a single cloud in the Boston sky. The kind of weather that almost convinces you nothing could go wrong. I took the long way to my parents' estate, every turn a mini rehearsal in my head. practice smiles, scripted answers to questions about work, marriage, children, the trifecta of familial shame. When I pulled into the long tree-lined driveway, the Mercedes, the one I had given my father, was parked prominently near the entrance, gleaming in the sun. Yesterday, he'd tucked it away. Today, it was displayed like a prize at auction. Interesting. Inside the Matthews estate buzzed with polite conversation, forced laughter, and the clink of highball glasses. Same antique furniture, same cold floral arrangements, same cast of characters, second cousins, uncles from business circles, and friends of friends who'd become permanent fixtures in our supposedly intimate family events. My mother greeted me first. Her hug was warm, genuine. "You look beautiful, darling," she whispered before glancing over my shoulder and lowering her voice. "Your father's in the back garden with the Peterson group." Translation, brace yourself. Aunt Linda cornered me next, dishing out passive-aggressive compliments and subtle jabs about my love life. Uncle George boomed his usual, "There's our Wall Street wizard," which probably sent my father into a silent rage if he heard it. My cousin Rachel gave me a knowing smile and gently touched my arm. She never said much, but she always noticed everything. And then, like a conductor entering an orchestra pit, Richard Matthews emerged. Flanked by 3 of his business friends laughing at something only moderately funny, he strolled through the crowd, owning the space. His gaze swept the room, nodding to important people like James, then Sophia, then me. Just a flicker of recognition, a curt nod, no smile, no warmth. As if I were a business associate he barely tolerated. I forced a laugh at whatever Rachel had just said, pretended not to notice. My mother appeared seconds later, placing a soft hand on my arm. "Your father mentioned the car. That was very generous of you," she said gently, eyes scanning my expression. Before I could respond, she continued, "Come say hello to the Stevensons. They'd love your insight on the Singapore market." She didn't say it, but I heard it. "Let's redirect. Keep it polite. Let's not cause waves today." And so I did. I performed, until James arrived fashionably late as always, his perfect wife Rebecca in tow, their 2 perfect children in coordinated pastel outfits. Richard greeted them like royalty, clapping James on the back. "Dad, the new car is insane," James grinned. "When did you decide to upgrade?" And my father, without missing a beat, said, "Sometimes you have to treat yourself, son. Success has its privileges." No mention of me, of the gift, of the gesture. My stomach twisted. Sophia, bless her, found me seconds later. She pulled me into a long hug and whispered, "I heard about your promotion. That's amazing, Liz. Seriously, you're breaking records." Her use of my childhood nickname made my eyes sting. "Thanks," I murmured. I just wanted him to notice. You know, Sophia's expression shifted, almost maternal. "You need to understand something," she said. "Dad, he's never going to give you what you want, not because you don't deserve it, but because he doesn't know how. Something in him is broken when it comes to you." It hit harder than I expected, not because it was new information, but because it wasn't. Out the bay windows, I spotted my father leading another group of business associates to the Mercedes, opening doors, pointing at features, smiling. That smile, that pride I had never seen directed at me. "He's been doing that all morning," Sophia said, appearing at my elbow. 3 tours, 3 different groups. Mother told me you bought it." I sipped my wine and whispered, "Generosity wasn't the motivation. I just wanted him to see me. Just once. Not pathetic," she said, squeezing my arm, "just human." The first course arrived just as the seating bell rang. Assigned places, scripted hierarchy. James and Rebecca at the head near father. Sophia and her family next to them. Me, I was near the end. Between a junior associate from Dad's firm and someone's husband, I barely knew. During the first toast, Richard lifted his glass with theatrical elegance. Each year, he began, "I'm reminded of how fortunate I am, not just to have built a business, but to have built a legacy, one carried on by my children." His gaze swept across James, then Sophia, stopped short of me. "I'm proud of my family, of what we stand for. of how we move forward by honoring the past, not challenging it. His eyes briefly met mine, cold, calculated. And in that moment, I knew exactly what was happening. Not only would I not be praised, I would be erased. I should have walked away. It would have been the smart thing to do. Grab my clutch, excuse myself, disappear into the quiet of the guest house or a waiting Uber and leave the past exactly where it had always lived in my rearview mirror. But something inside me wouldn't move, wouldn't run, wouldn't retreat. Not this time. The envelope in my purse pressed against my hip like a heartbeat, pulsing with every breath I took. It was no longer a secret. It was a weapon, or maybe a key. Dessert was being cleared. The brandy had started flowing, and Richard Father was pushing back his chair with that signature pause that always signaled he had a speech to deliver. The room hushed like clockwork. This was the Matthews tradition, his throne, his spotlight. I'd like to take a moment. He began standing with his snifter held high to express my pride in what the Matthews family has built together. A few nods, some claps. James, your vision for the Riverside Project bold, strategic. That's the kind of leadership we need in this family. James smiled. Rebecca beamed. The usual theater. And Sophia, your grace and community leadership remind us all that strength is not just in deals and numbers, but in compassion. Your work with the hospital board brings true honor to our name. Sophia smiled awkwardly, clearly uncomfortable with praise. Then, the silence. Everyone waited for my name. My turn. Acknowledgement of the daughter who had just made history at one of the most competitive firms in New York. The woman who gifted him the car parked just outside. It didn't come. Instead, he offered a tight-lipped smirk and said, "As I reflect on my children's accomplishments, I'm reminded of how success can be misunderstood." Another pause. Another sip. Some people, he continued his tone-sharpening, measure success by titles, by flashy gifts. But real success isn't bought. It's built, over time, with legacy, with substance. The words hung in the air like poison, a few nervous laughs, a few averted eyes. The insult was thinly veiled, but the target was clear. Then with mock warmth, he raised his glass slightly higher and said, "To the Matthews family, may we always value what truly matters." It wasn't the first time he'd humiliated me in front of people I loved, but it would be the last. My chair scraped gently as I stood. Forks froze mid-air. Conversations halted. I didn't raise my glass. I didn't smile. "Thank you, Father, for that illuminating speech," I began, calm and clear. "Truly, I've spent 32 years chasing a version of success that might finally earn your approval. Today I understand why that was never going to happen." The room fell silent. I saw his jaw tighten, but he didn't interrupt. I graduated top of my class at Cornell, built my career without a single family connection. I became the youngest senior investment strategist in my firm's history. I bought you that car. I nodded toward the window, not because you needed it, not even because you deserved it, but because I still somehow believed that if I did something big enough, grand enough, you'd finally see me. I reached into my purse. Time slowed. I pulled out the envelope, but then I remembered something. I stepped forward, walking slowly down the length of the long mahogany table. Every eye followed. That love can't be bought. And maybe it was never mine to earn in the first place. I placed the envelope, neat, pristine, heavy with revelation, right in the center of the table beside his brandy glass. "For you, Dad. Happy Father's Day." A hush swept through the room like wind through a church. His hand hovered above the envelope but didn't touch it. No one spoke. I turned, adjusted my dress, lifted my chin, and walked out, calm, poised, more myself than I had ever been inside that house. Out in the driveway, the evening air hit my skin like freedom. The Mercedes greeted me with a soft chirp as I unlocked it, slid behind the wheel, and closed the door. Through the rearview mirror, I saw them faces at the window, my family, my ghosts. And then the front door burst open. He was there, Richard Matthews, standing in the doorway, clutching the envelope like a lifeline. He opened it. He read. And then he shouted something. My name, maybe. Or something else. But it didn't matter. Because the engine hummed, the headlights lit the path forward, and for the first time in my life, I didn't look back. I didn't turn off my phone. I wanted to see the fallout. By the time I reached my hotel in downtown Boston, the screen was lit up like a Christmas tree. Calls from James, Sophia, my mother, even distant cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. The family detonation I'd triggered was erupting in real time. I ignored the first wave. I needed space, silence, a shower. But Sophia's name kept flashing every few minutes, and something told me she was the only one who deserved a response. Finally, I picked up. Liz, she whispered like she was hiding in a coat closet. Where are you? I'm safe. I replied, sitting on the edge of the bed. What happened? She exhaled hard. You blew up dinner, that's what happened. Dad read the test at the table, out loud, then screamed for Mom. They disappeared into his study for 10 minutes, then he stormed out yelling your name. When he realized you were gone, I've never seen him like that. I said nothing, just listened. He's in the study now, making phone calls. Mom locked herself in their bedroom. James is threatening to get a lawyer over the car. I nearly laughed. Of course. A man threatens your identity for 3 decades, and his concern is a luxury vehicle. Sophia's voice dropped further. Is it true? The test, yes. My voice cracked, but didn't break. He's not my biological father. I took the test after the ancestry site flagged a mismatch. Then I used a sample from his hairbrush. It's definitive. She was quiet for a long time. Do you know who is no? It only confirms who isn't. But judging by the way Mom looked at him when he opened that envelope, I think she does. More silence. Then how long do you think he's known? Her question pierced deeper than any accusation. My whole life, I said without hesitation. He's always known. Maybe not from day one, but early enough. It explains everything, Sophia. The coldness, the comparisons. It wasn't just indifference, it was punishment. Her voice softened. I'm so sorry, Liz. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. It's not your fault. You were the only one who ever tried to understand. Before hanging up, she whispered, I love you. This doesn't change that. It landed heavier than she probably intended, because for the first time, it felt real. A few hours later, I received a message from a number I barely recognized, my mother's private cell, rarely used. The message was simple. I never meant for you to find out this way. It wasn't an affair. There was someone before your father, Thomas Keller. We were in college. When I found out I was pregnant, Richard offered to marry me anyway, to give you his name. Please believe me, he tried to love you as his own. But some men can't separate biology from love. I failed you both by pretending the truth didn't matter. Can we meet tomorrow, just the two of us? I read it 3 times. It confirmed everything. It wasn't just betrayal, it was theater. A family built on performance with me, always miscast. Now I understood why my mother shrank in his presence, why her love was warm only when he wasn't around. She'd been hiding something for 3 decades, and now that secret had burst into the open like a flare. I didn't reply. Not yet. Instead, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of the city. I thought about Thomas Keller, a name I'd never heard until that message. Somewhere out there was a man who had no idea he had a daughter. Somewhere in his house might be photos of children who shared my DNA. It was too much, but also, it was clarity. The following morning, I agreed to meet my mother. We chose a small cafe far from any Matthews haunts. Neutral ground. She looked tired, older. Not in a weak way, but in the way people look when a mask they've worn for too long finally slips. His name was Thomas. She said, fingers trembling around her cappuccino. He was kind, brilliant, but not from a family mine would ever accept. She went on to describe the life they might have had before Richard, before the Matthews name. Then her voice broke. I told myself you'd be better off with his name, his resources, his structure, but not his love, I said. She nodded. He tried Eliza, in his way. But every time he looked at you, he saw someone else's eyes. There was so much I wanted to scream. Why didn't you protect me? Why didn't you leave, but I didn't? Because I saw something in her that I hadn't expected. Regret, not performative, real. I failed you, she whispered, and I don't expect forgiveness. But I am asking for the chance to finally tell you the truth. So I let her. For the first time in my life, I let my mother talk without pretense. No name cards, no matching wine glasses. Just one woman telling her daughter the truth about a life built on sacrifice and shame. When we parted, she hugged me. And for once, I didn't flinch. I didn't plan to reach out to him. At least not yet. But after meeting my mother, after hearing her voice tremble when she said he never knew about you, I couldn't stop thinking about him. Thomas Keller. A name without a face. A man with my blood. An entire parallel life I might have had. If things had been different. That night I found him. MIT alumnus. Founder of a successful engineering firm in Palo Alto. 3 children. Married. His company specialized in environmental infrastructure, solar grids, clean water systems, the kind of quiet legacy work that doesn't scream but sustains. And he looked like me. The same chin, the same dark eyes, the same half smile I had spent my life trying to coax from Richard. I drafted an email, deleted it, rewrote it. Eventually I settled on the truth. Mr. Keller, I recently discovered something that I believe connects us. I understand this message may come as a shock. I don't expect anything. I'm not asking for anything. But I believe I may be your biological daughter. If you're open to a conversation, I'd welcome it. Eliza Matthews. I sent it. Closed the laptop. Stared out the window of my Manhattan apartment for the next 2 hours. And then his reply came. It was cautious, as it should have been, but it was also kind. Eliza, I'm stunned but not dismissive. This is something I'd never imagined. I'd like time to process this. I'm scheduled to be in New York next month for a conference. If you're willing to meet for coffee, I'd be grateful for the opportunity. Whatever the circumstances, thank you for reaching out with honesty and grace. Thomas Keller. I didn't cry. I didn't need to. Because for the first time, someone saw me without panic, without performance, just me. Meanwhile, the Matthews empire was in crisis mode. James had gone full damage control. He sent 2 terse texts: return Dad's property, retract your disgusting accusations. Apparently, he'd skipped the chapter on empathy in his Yale ethics course. Sophia, though, she called every day. Her voice was a lifeline. He's not speaking to Mom, she said during one late-night call. Barely speaking to me either. He's pretending like it's business as usual. But he looks smaller. I didn't ask what that meant. I already knew. When are you coming back? She asked. I'm not, I said simply. Not to that house. Not to that dynamic. I get it, she said. It's poison. It's always been. Her tone turned quieter. I should have said something years ago. I saw how he treated you. I just kept the peace, like always. I leaned against my windowsill, the skyline glowing behind me. It's okay, I said. You're saying it now. And that was enough. 2 weeks later, I met Thomas. He chose a quiet cafe near Central Park. Dressed simply, no expensive suit, just a man who looked like he'd seen a lot of life and carried it well. When he saw me, he stood. Eliza, he asked gently, and for the first time in my life, someone said my name like it wasn't a mistake. We talked for hours about my career, his family, our mutual love for dark roast coffee and over-organizing spreadsheets, about the kind of stubborn resilience that apparently runs in the blood. You have my mother's intensity, he said over dessert. But when you talked about your market model, that spark in your eye, that's familiar. I have a son who does the same thing when he designs circuits. We didn't cry. We didn't hug. It wasn't some movie reunion. It was better. It was real. There were no promises, no forced sentiment, just 2 people cautiously stepping toward a truth that had been buried for over 3 decades. Back in Boston, Richard had his lawyer send a formal letter, a request for the return of his car, and a warning that any future defamatory statements would result in legal action. It was so predictable, I laughed. I instructed my own attorney to handle the vehicle return. With one stipulation, the letter would include a copy of the DNA results and a brief note. Facts are not defamatory. You erased me for 32 years. I'm simply correcting the record. That was the last correspondence I ever had with Richard Matthews. James never spoke to me again. But that wasn't a loss. That was a release. 6 months later, I didn't recognize my own life, and that was a good thing. The woman I used to be, she lived on edge, performed every gesture with the silent question, will this finally make him proud? The woman I was becoming didn't ask for permission to be proud of herself. Richard Matthews had become a name on legal paper. He never apologized, never acknowledged the truth. He never had to because I no longer needed him to. The Mercedes returned, sold. The money invested into something that finally made sense to me. I launched a private equity advisory fund with a close colleague focused on women-led startups. No more proving myself to men who had already made up their minds about my worth. Sophia called regularly. Our conversations evolved from damage reports to reflections. Sometimes we laughed about childhood memories, now illuminated by the new truth. He used to tell me you were too sensitive, she recalled one day stirring tea at her kitchen island. He told me I was defective, I replied, that I asked too many questions, that my ambition was unnatural. Sophia winced. He wanted obedience, not brilliance. I nodded, and I spent 3 decades trying to convince a man who didn't love me to love me better. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Not anymore. My relationship with our mother was complicated, but honest. For the first time, she stopped performing perfection. She told me stories about Thomas, about the girl she was before Richard Matthews convinced her to erase herself. I thought giving you his name would protect you, she said one night on a walk around her garden. I didn't realize it would cost you your identity. She didn't ask for absolution, and I didn't give it. But we were rebuilding, truth by truth. And Thomas. We met again. Then again. No grand reunion. Just 2 people meeting in the space between biology and choice. He asked questions, listened carefully, celebrated my career without disclaimers. He told his wife, his adult children, and to my surprise, they welcomed me cautiously, respectfully, without assumptions. It was nothing like the Matthews family. It was better. Thanksgiving arrived and Sophia invited me to her home instead of the Matthews estate. Mom's coming too, she said. Richard isn't. He said if you're there, he won't be. I paused. You okay with that? I am, she said. Let him hide. We're done enabling his comfort. Dinner was warm, imperfect, full of laughter and spilled cranberry sauce. Sophia's kids climbed onto my lap after dessert. My mother helped with dishes, humming to herself like the girl she once was. And for the first time, I felt like I belonged somewhere. After dinner, my mother called me from the guest room. I never said it when it counted, she began. But Eliza, I am proud of you. Not for your job, your titles, your promotions, but for the woman you've become. I blinked back tears. Thank you. She wasn't perfect, neither was I. But we were healing. Together. I still see my therapist every Tuesday. Still unpack the years I wasted begging for breadcrumbs from a man who was emotionally constipated by ego and resentment. But now, when I look in the mirror, I don't see someone striving. I see someone whole. Here's the thing I learned. Family isn't DNA. It's not names on a will or seats at a table. It's the people who see you fully and choose you anyway. And love. Love isn't something you earn by outperforming your siblings or buying gifts that cost you peace. Love is offered freely or it isn't love at all. I walked away from a man who couldn't love me the way I deserved, and I walked toward people who did. I don't know where my relationship with Thomas will go. I don't know if Richard will ever say my name without venom again. But I know this, I am not the sum of one man's silence, and neither are you. Have you ever discovered that your true family isn't defined by blood? Sometimes the people who should love us unconditionally are the ones who hurt us most deeply. If my story resonates with you, drop a comment below, like, subscribe, share this with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, sometimes taking back your power means walking away from people who never deserved it in the first place.